I 30M thought I had built the life I always wanted. I'm a financial analyst, a job that's all about patterns, risk assessment, and secure futures. For 3 years, I built that future with Mia, 28F. We moved in together after a year, and when my grandmother passed away and left me a $50,000 inheritance, it felt like a sign. It was our seed money, our future fund, for a house, for a wedding, for a safety net. We opened a joint savings account, and I transferred the entire amount. "This is for us," I told her, holding her hands. "This is our foundation." She cried happy tears and promised we would build an amazing life together. That was the peak. That was the moment before the slow, almost imperceptible decline began. Mia worked in retail, and her income was unpredictable. It didn't matter to me. I believed in us. So, I covered probably 80% of our living expenses. The rent, the utilities, the groceries. I was the provider, the stable one, and I wore that title with pride. I saw it as taking care of the woman I loved. The first red flag was small, almost silly. She had a habit of borrowing a 20 from my wallet for coffee with friends and forgetting to pay it back. Then it was 100 for a can't-miss sale. I'd gently tease her about it, and she'd pout and call me stingy, turning it into a joke. So I laughed along, ignoring the tiny, nagging voice in my head that was trained to spot financial leaks. I disabled those alarms for her. I told myself I was being the cool, supportive boyfriend, not the controlling accountant. The real problem had a name: Isaac, her ex-boyfriend. He was a ghost that never quite left our relationship. He'd text her at odd hours, usually with some crisis. His car broke down. He got fired from his bartending job. He was depressed. And Mia, with her heart that was too big for her own good, would always drop everything to console him. She called it being a good person. I called it an unhealthy attachment. We fought about it, our only real fights. "He's manipulative, Mia," I'd say. "He's just lonely, and he has no one else," she'd reply, making me feel like the villain for setting a boundary. Eventually, I gave up. I told myself he was harmless, just a loser she felt sorry for. I was so wrong. The setup for the earthquake was a Tuesday night. Mia was unusually quiet, glued to her phone. When I asked what was wrong, she forced a smile. "It's nothing. Just Isaac being Isaac." Later, I saw her crying in the bathroom. I should have known then. I should have checked our bank account right that second. But I trusted her. I held her and told her everything would be okay. The next morning, I left for work as usual, giving her a kiss goodbye. She seemed distant, but I chalked it up to her worrying about Isaac. I had a big presentation that day. My mind was on spreadsheets and quarterly reports. I was managing millions of dollars of company money with meticulous care, completely oblivious that my own foundation was about to be dynamited. At 11:37 a.m., my personal phone buzzed on my desk. It was a push notification from our bank. A withdrawal of $50,000. The entire savings account. Our future drained. My blood ran cold. For a full minute, I just stared at the screen. My professional world fading into static. There had to be a mistake. A glitch. Fraud. Then a second later, a text from Mia lit up my screen. It was only 2 words, but they made the world drop out from under me. "I'm sorry, I didn't call Mia back. I didn't text." I sat in my ergonomic office chair. The world narrowed to the cold. Hard numbers on my screen. $50,000 withdrawn. And those 2 words, "I'm sorry." An apology wasn't a reason. It was an admission of guilt. My mind, trained to assess risk and damage, immediately shifted into a mode I'd never used for my personal life: crisis management. The emotional part of me was screaming, a white-hot nova of betrayal and panic. But I smothered it. I couldn't afford emotion right now. Emotion was what had gotten me into this mess. Logic was the only way out. I stood up, walked to my boss's office, and told him I had a severe family emergency and had to leave immediately. My voice was so steady it surprised even me. I drove home, my hands clenched on the wheel, not with rage, but with a focused, terrifying calm. I replayed every red flag I'd ignored. Every time I'd let a borrowed 20 slide. Every argument about Isaac I'd conceded. I had been the stable, reliable idiot funding my own destruction. I found her on the couch, her eyes red and puffy. She looked up at me, a mixture of fear and defiance on her face. "Henry, I can explain," she started, her voice trembling. I didn't sit down. I stood by the door, my posture rigid. "Explain," I said, the single word flat and cold as ice. The story tumbled out. Isaac had been arrested. A DUI and possession with intent to sell. His bail was set at $50,000. He'd called her from jail, crying, saying he'd be beaten, that his life was over. "He had no one else," she sobbed. "He promised he'd pay it back as soon as the bondsman returns it. It's just a hold. We're not losing the money." I stared at her, truly seeing her for the first time. She wasn't just naive. She had unilaterally decided that our future, my inheritance, was a suitable gamble for her toxic ex-boyfriend's freedom. She had prioritized a criminal's temporary comfort over our entire life together. The sheer, staggering disrespect of it all was so immense it was almost beautiful in its audacity. "We?" I finally said, my voice dangerously quiet. "There is no we. You made that decision when you emptied a shared account without a single conversation. You didn't ask. You stole. I didn't steal," she cried, standing up now, anger replacing her guilt. "It's for a humanitarian reason. It's bail. You're so obsessed with money you can't see a human being in crisis." That was her mic drop moment. She truly believed it. She had framed herself as the hero and me as the villain. In her mind, she had done a noble, difficult thing, and my reaction was just proving my cold-heartedness. I didn't yell. I didn't try to reason with her. The time for that was over. I simply looked at her, my expression blank. "A humanitarian reason," I repeated, letting the absurdity of the phrase hang in the air between us. "You donated our house down payment to a drug dealer. You set our future on fire to keep him warm for a few weeks." I turned and walked toward our bedroom. "Where are you going?" she demanded, her voice shrill. "To pack a bag," I said without looking back. "I'll be staying at a hotel." "You're just going to leave? Now, when I need you?" The entitlement in her voice was breathtaking. I stopped at the bedroom door and finally looked at her over my shoulder. The last thread of any feeling I had for her snapped. "You need me?" I said, my tone laced with a frosty final irony. "You should have thought of that before you set fire to the one person who was actually building a life with you." I packed a single suitcase with enough clothes for a week. As I zipped it closed, I heard her on the phone in the living room, her voice a frantic whisper. "He's losing his mind, Isaac. I know, baby, I know. It's going to be okay." She wasn't talking to a lawyer or a friend. She was comforting him, the man whose freedom she had just purchased with my past and our future. I walked out of the apartment without another word. As I drove away, I didn't feel heartbreak. I felt a clean, sharp severance. She had drawn a line in the sand with that $50,000 withdrawal, and I was about to show her that I could play on the other side of that line too. But my game wouldn't involve tears or screaming matches. It would involve lawyers, paperwork, and the cold, unyielding force of the law. The hotel room was sterile and quiet, a perfect mirror of my internal state. I set up my laptop on the generic desk, ordered a coffee from room service, and got to work. The emotional storm had passed, leaving behind the clear, frozen landscape of logic. Mia had used our personal relationship to justify a financial crime. My response would be to use the financial and legal system to formally end the personal relationship. It was the only language left that we both understood. My first call wasn't to a friend. It was to Benjamin Croft, a litigation attorney my firm used for our most aggressive cases. He was known for being brilliant, meticulous, and utterly ruthless. When I explained the situation, the joint account, the inheritance, the unauthorized $50K withdrawal for a third party's bail, he didn't offer sympathy. He made a low, appreciative sound. "Clean," he said. "Very clean. Emotionally messy, but legally this is a beautiful case. We can move fast." While Benjamin started drafting the necessary documents, I took my own administrative steps. I logged into every single financial portal I could access. I removed Mia as an authorized user from my credit cards. I changed the passwords to all my individual savings and investment accounts. I called my bank and formally reported the $50,000 withdrawal as unauthorized and initiated a fraud investigation, providing them with the text message where she admitted to the transaction. It was a long shot, but it created a formal paper trail that would haunt her. Each click, each call, was another brick in the wall I was building between my old life and my new one. I maintained absolute radio silence with Mia. Her texts evolved from defensive, "We need to talk about this," to pleading, "Please, Henry, I'm scared. Where are you?" to increasingly panicked, "The bail bondsman is saying things are complicated. Isaac's hearing is in 2 weeks." I read them all with the detached interest of a scientist observing a lab experiment. She was beginning to understand that the consequences of her actions were not just my anger, but a complex legal and financial nightmare that she was utterly unprepared to handle. She had thought the $50,000 was the hard part. She was starting to realize it was only the price of admission. 2 days after I left, Benjamin emailed me the documents. The first was a formal demand letter for the immediate return of the $50,000, citing fraudulent conversion and breach of fiduciary duty. The second was the piece de resistance, an eviction notice. The apartment lease was solely in my name. She was a mere occupant. The notice gave her 30 days to vacate, as required by law, but it was the cold legal language that made it so powerful. It referred to her as the respondent and stated that her Continued occupancy was no longer permissible, following the severe breakdown of the personal relationship and the associated financial breaches. I didn't send them. My lawyer did. Benjamin had a process server deliver them to her at my apartment at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. I knew because I was watching the building's security camera feed on my phone from my hotel room. I saw the server approach the door. I saw Mia open it, looking confused. I saw her take the envelope and the server walking away. I couldn't see her face clearly, but I saw her figure slump against the doorframe after she opened it. It was a silent movie of consequences unfolding in real time. Less than 60 seconds later, my phone lit up. It was her. I let it ring. A voicemail appeared, then a torrent of texts. Her. An eviction notice? Are you fucking kidding me? You're evicting me? How could you do this to me? I'm your girlfriend. You're a monster. A cold-hearted monster. I put my phone face down. The retaliation wasn't emotional. It wasn't a screaming match. It was a series of documents, filed with the court and delivered by a neutral third party. It was the system, the very structure of rules and laws I understood so well, operating on my behalf. She had drained our account in a single, emotional, impulsive act. My response was a calculated multi-step legal process. She had tried to burn my world down. I was simply calling in the fire department and the demolition crew. The weeks that followed were a masterclass in quiet, legal consequences. I stayed in the hotel, focusing on work and my own healing. My silence was a wall, and Mia's frantic attempts to scale it, the crying voicemails, the angry texts, the pleas sent through mutual friends, all crumbled against it. She had become background noise, a problem that was being systematically handled by my lawyer and the legal system. I wasn't heartless. I was just done. The part of me that loved her had been extinguished the moment I saw that bank notification. The $50,000 was gone. The bail bondsman confirmed the money was processed and non-refundable until the case was resolved, which could take months or years. Benjamin, my lawyer, explained that while we had a strong civil case, collecting from someone like Isaac would be like getting blood from a stone. But that wasn't the point anymore. The point was the paper trail. The demand letter and the fraud case with the bank established a legal record of her actions. It wasn't about getting the money back. It was about making sure there was a permanent public record of how she had stolen it. The eviction notice, however, was the consequence that hit her in the present tense. As the 30-day mark approached, her messages became truly desperate. Isaac was out on bail but was largely useless, and the reality of being homeless was setting in. She had no family nearby, no savings, and her retail job couldn't cover a new apartment deposit. A mutual friend finally called me, acting as a mediator. "Henry, she's a wreck," they said. "She knows she messed up. Is there really no way? Can't she just stay until she finds a place?" I felt no satisfaction, only a firm, unyielding resolve. "No," I said, my voice calm. "She made a choice that demonstrated a fundamental lack of respect and judgment. I cannot have that person living in my home. The legal process will continue. I wasn't being cruel. I was being safe. I was protecting the last vestiges of my stability." On the 31st day, when she had not vacated, Benjamin filed the official paperwork with the court to have her forcibly removed by the sheriff. That was the final straw. The threat of being physically thrown out by law enforcement, of having that humiliation on her permanent record, finally broke her. She packed her things and moved into a friend's cramped spare room the next day. I had the locks changed immediately. The final chapter came about a month later. I was back in my apartment, which felt both familiar and entirely new. It was mine again. My phone buzzed, an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. It was Mia. Her voice was flat, drained of all its former drama. "Isaac skipped bail," she said. "He never showed up for his court date. The bondsman is keeping the $50,000. It's gone." She paused, and I heard a shaky breath. "I lost everything for nothing. You were right. About everything. I didn't say I told you so. I didn't offer comfort. There was nothing left to say. The consequences had spoken for themselves, more eloquently and brutally than I ever could. I'm sorry that happened," I said, and I meant it in the most distant, impersonal way possible. Then I hung up. That was the last time we ever spoke. These days, my life is quieter, more cautious. I see a therapist to untangle why I ignored so many red flags for so long. I'm rebuilding my savings, slowly. The $50,000 is a painful lesson, but it was the cost of learning my own worth. I learned that love shouldn't require you to sacrifice your financial security, your peace, or your self-respect. And I learned that the most powerful response to an emotional atomic bomb isn't a bigger bomb. It's the calm, methodical, and irrevocable process of building a fallout shelter, changing the locks, and moving on with your life. She didn't just drain my savings. She drained any last doubt I had that leaving was the only option. And in the end, that clarity was worth every penny.